Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Stephen Scarrett Davis, and I serve as the Executive Director here at the Maryland State Arts Council. A couple quick notes before we get started. To ensure an equitable process, we'll be using a script to guide today's panel meeting. So if it sounds like we're reading, we are. And so there will be a high level of formality in our presentation. Please also note that this meeting is now being recorded. Panelists, I want to thank you so much for being here, for your service to the arts communities of Maryland, for your ability to move with changes, and for your grace in that, for all of the work that you have done and all of the work that you will do today. Thank you so much. To begin, we're going to start with a reference shot of the features of Google Meet, the platform that we're using for today's panel meeting. Please note that the mute microphone icon and the video, the camera icon buttons at the bottom of your screen. Panelists, to avoid any background noise, we ask that you remain on mute during the meeting unless you're speaking. Additionally, we ask that all comments regarding applications and applicants are vocalized. Please refrain from using the chat feature. Are there any questions about Google Meet? All right, we'll move on to introductions. I'll start by introducing our MSAC team members, and I'll talk about our roles during today's panel meeting. I've already introduced myself, and my role beyond this introduction is monitoring the meeting today. Kathy Teixeira, Grants Director, will be serving as panel facilitator and will be averaging final scores. Ryan Patterson, Public Art Program Director, and Nora Howell, Public Art Project Manager, are the program staff participating in today's meeting. They have reviewed all of the applications that you'll be discussing and scoring today, and they will offer clarifications as needed. Kirk Amaral Snow, our Grants Management Associate, will be our timekeeper and provide technical support. Panelists, I'm now going to ask you to introduce yourselves by name and organization or art form, and your location within the state, the location you're joining us from. Ryan will call out your name for your introduction. Please be sure to use that unmute button and unmute yourself before speaking. Ryan?
Thanks. Let's start with Brendan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brendan Smith. I'm the Arts and Humanities Coordinator for the City of Tacoma Park, and I'm also a mixed media artist. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Kirk Cease.
Hey, my name is Kirk Cease. I'm a working public artist living in Lutherville, Timonium area.
Thanks. Dr. May Amaway.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is May, and I'm a public art consultant out of Prince George's County, Maryland.
Thank you, May. Teresa Connors.
Good morning. I'm Teresa Connors, and I am a fine arts supervisor for Dorchester County Public Schools on the Eastern Shore.
Thank you. Jim Epstein.
Good morning. My name is Jim Epstein, and I'm actually our organization, Glenmont Forest Neighbor Civic Association, is a past recipient of some of these awards, and have put up a beautiful sculpture and three-dimensional project in the Montgomery County, Glenmont area.
Thank you, Jim. And Nicole Ringo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I'm the development manager at the Neighborhood Design Center. I'm here from Frederick, Maryland, and I also have a background as a visual artist myself. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, panelists. In accordance with Maryland's Open Meetings Act, applicants may also be attending online. Applicants and other guests may observe but may not otherwise participate in the process. If you're here to monitor or observe, you will be unable to access video and mic functions throughout the duration of the meeting. Next, we'll review MSAC's guiding documents to ground today's process. The first is our land acknowledgement statement. This was developed as part of our land acknowledgement project that consulted with tribes and tribal leadership from across the state of Maryland to develop a set of land acknowledgement statements and other actions that are all available on our website at msac.org in the resources section. I'll read our statewide land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Accohonic Indian Tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, Choptico Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Nasu-Wawash Band of Indians, Piscataway Pinoy Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Yakagani River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. And going beyond performativity, MSAC continues to engage with tribal leadership to gain access to state resources as needed. Our equity and justice statement, the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council and supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. The vision of the Maryland State Arts Council is that we play an essential role ensuring that every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And our mission is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. In 2024, last year, we adopted a new strategic plan that is based on 5 pillars. The pillars here are on your screen in red. Those are access, awareness, connection, equity, and leadership. And the goals are underneath those. You'll soon be able to find more information about our strategic plan on our website, msac.org. And next we have creative meeting actions. These are sort of the guardrails we put on our public discussions here at the Maryland State Arts Council. They're things that we appreciate participants in our meetings observing as we enter into discussions. So I'm actually going to ask the panelists to come off of mute and to read these aloud with me. I'll start with the first one, and then if panelists can just join in turn, reading one after another until we get to the end. That would be great. There are more creative meeting actions than panelists, so you may read more. I'll start. Celebrate being in the space with other creative people.
Engage with everyone's presence as a gift.
Acknowledge that together we know a lot.
Enter the conversation.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry.
Well, share your idea and trust that it will be heard.
Use I statements.
I'm not seeing anything but a green screen right now. Not sure why.
That's a nice statement.
That's a.
I mean, I see everyone, everyone's faces, but as far as like the presentation box,
You don't
it's
see
just
that?
green.
Oh.
Let's go ahead
maybe-
and Kirk, thanks for letting us know. Why don't we finish these creative meeting actions and then we'll ask you to refresh your screen. 1 second. So our last one was use I statements.
Focus your language on the task at hand.
Hold one another accountable with care.
Apply yes and I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it.
Balance speaking and listening.
All right, thanks so much. And Kirk, it looks like you've come back. Are you able to see the presentation now?
No, I just see the green screen again. I'm gonna switch from desktop to laptop, see if that helps.
Okay.
Let's hold for one moment so we get Kirk back. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Thanks for your continued patience, everyone. All right, welcome back, Kirk. Are you able to see the presentation now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Awesome.
Great. That's great.
All right, we'll continue on. Next, I'll talk about equity and what we mean about equity in this process. The application for the Public Art Across Maryland program is meant to inspire authentic reflection and internal analysis for each applicant, with the knowledge that the Maryland State Arts Council is to be used and seen and utilized as a collaborative partner in the process. One aspect of this partnership is to guide panelists to see beyond the polish of grant writing that may be inequitably influenced by the privilege of resources, financial, educational, etc., instead to focus upon the impact of the applicant. And panelists, I know that you've received training and we've talked a lot about this, but this is just a reminder of that point. We're also going to ask you today, panelists, to frame your responses as recommendations. For example, a comment or a response, there's minimal information provided about the applicant's plan for community engagement. As a recommendation, it becomes, I would recommend that the applicant include a detailed plan for community engagement in the planning process. As part of our service to Maryland's arts sector, MSAC offers feedback upon request to Public Art Across Maryland applicants with suggestions for strengthening future applications. Your recommendations, and that's why it's important to frame your responses as recommendations, your recommendations help us provide this valuable feedback to applicants. Are there any questions about the expectations shared through the guiding documents so far? All right, hearing none, I'm going to hand over to Kathy Teixeira to lead us through the next part of our introduction. Go ahead and take it away, Kathy.
Thanks, Stephen. The goal of today is to arrive at a final average score for applications submitted from across the state. We will review applications that received an average initial score of 85% or higher. Please note that this panel meeting is not the full panel review process. Comprehensive application reviews and initial scores have been submitted by the panelists prior to today's meeting. Today is an opportunity to add to or edit those reviews and submit final scores based on discussions held by the panelists. Based on your discussion and final scoring, MSAC will determine the awarding of final grants. A reminder to panelists that this is not a comparative process. Each application is to be evaluated individually based on the rubric provided. Any comparison content between applications should not influence your score. Please also note your comments. Please also make sure your comments align with your scoring. If you're selecting a lower score for a particular criteria, your notes should provide justification and/or feedback accordingly. Next on the screen, you'll see a breakdown of the time allotted for each application's review. This process mirrors the panel process of the National Endowment for the Arts. MSAC's commitment to equity in the panel process requires anonymity of specific panelist scores. The initial and final scores shared today are the averages from all panelist scores. We will start by sharing a slide of the grant application's initial average score. The lead reader will start off with 2 minutes to introduce the grant in connection with the rubric. Our timekeeper, Kirk, will alert us at the 2-minute mark. Then we will open it up for additional discussion with all panelists for 3 minutes. The discussion period is to be used for sharing additional information or recommendations in alignment with the rubric. If the lead reader was cut off in their opening remarks, they would be welcome to complete their thoughts in this discussion period. Kirk will again alert us at the 3-minute mark. Then I will ask program staff, Ryan and Nora, to contribute clarifications when needed based on their review of the application. Additionally, they will provide reminders to panelists to ensure that recommendations are in alignment with the rubric and MSAC's panel procedures. Then panelists will have time to submit their final scores and comments in Smart Simple, and the final average scores will be shared. Panelists, we ask that you wait to submit your final scores and comments until after the discussion period has concluded. We'll be taking short breaks about every 90 minutes or as needed. Depending on how we are doing on timing, we may shift some of those break times, but we'll be sure to check in with you, panelists. There are 2 conflicts of interest that have been identified prior to today's meeting. If you have a conflict of interest that we do not already recognize, please just announce yourself at the beginning of that application review. Those with conflicts will not participate in discussions and scoring. Before we move on to begin our reviews today, are there any questions regarding the panel meeting structure? All right, if not, we're going to start off with a practice round using a test application. So panelists, you should now be logged into your Smart Simple account on your panelist home screen. And you'll see today's applications listed under the pending final review section. So please go ahead and click that. And please click on the PAM type header at the top of your screen, and this will sort the list in the order in which we will review today. The first application that appears should be the test application -37961. So please go ahead and open this test application. And if this were a real application, you would see your initial scores and notes here. But since this is just the test application, the scores and comment sections will all appear blank. We're going to walk through what the process would look like if this were a real review, and you'll hear the script that will be used for all reviews today. So panelists, please open application ID -37961, submitted by the Maryland State Arts Council. The average initial score is 0%. The lead panelists will now have 2 minutes to introduce the grant in connection to the rubric. And this is where the lead panelists would speak. Then I will open it up for additional discussion with all panelists for 3 minutes. After the discussion period, I will turn to staff experts, Ryan and Nora. Do you have any additional information to share? This is when they would add any additional information if needed. Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please take 1 minute now to edit your final scores in Smart Simple with any additional comments. So panelists, we're actually going to test scores for this application and make sure everything is working as it should. So if you could please go through and select any score for each of the score fields, and you can just put in some random text in the comment sections. You could type ABC, test, whatever you want there. And then once you're done, click complete at the bottom of the page. That is what will send the scores over on our end. So we'll just take a moment to allow you to put in these test scores. We're just waiting for a couple more scores. Please make sure you're clicking the complete button at the bottom when you are done. And the average final score is 86.75%. So this is the way that each application review will occur. Do you have any questions about this process? All right, if not, then we're going to proceed with our application reviews. Our reviews today are grouped into application type. So we're going to start off with review of the New Artworks planning grants. Then we will move on to the New Artworks project grants. Just noting that Group A will not be reviewing any conservation grants today. So panelists, please go back to your panelist home screen and then to your pending final review section. Click on the PAM type header to sort the list in the review order. And we will get started. So panelists, please open application ID 2025-34407, submitted by the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County. The average initial score is 88.33%. Lead reader, Teresa, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. This planning grant was submitted by the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County. The planning process will focus on a utility box art wrap program. The applicant will coordinate with the City of Annapolis and related agencies to develop a long-range project to cover utility boxes with wraps designed by local artists. Planning will incorporate a call for artists, developing a database to house the future art submissions for the wrap catalog, and developing an overall timeline to produce a catalog of artwork that the community can choose from when they box in their own community. Strong points of the application include a detailed description of the planning process and of the artist selection process. This project has the potential to include a wide range of local artist submissions, and the applicant organization has indicated on their budget that they have nearly half of the anticipated planning budget secured through their own funding source.
All right,
And
thank
I
you.
didn't have any further recommendations for the application personally.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion starting now.
I also thought it was looks like a really fun, valuable public art project with a considerable amount of community engagement. I guess one suggestion for the applicant would be the schedule seems to be very, very ambitious. And just my own experience with public art projects, everything takes twice as long as you think it will, to just consider, how much time things will take. Call for submissions for artists also should clearly state that they don't actually have funding yet for implementation of the project.
I similarly thought that it was a strong application. I think one of my recommendations that I put in my comments was just some parameters and clearer criteria for the cost sharing with neighborhoods who would need funding to implement the design in neighborhoods. I think the application discussed that, but didn't give clear and specific criteria for determining case by case who would be eligible for support. I'll also add, I have a note about, I thought that their inclusion of clear and specific stakeholders really strengthened this application for me. Inclusion of partners specifically in the application, I think added to the feasibility and strength of the project.
All right, panelists, are there any other questions, thoughts, recommendations? All right. If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No further comment.
No comment.
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now. Panelists, while we're working on tabulating the scores, please feel free to get your notes ready for the next application, which is for Jazz Ehrenberg. And the average final score is 88.33%. Next, please open application ID 2025-34640, submitted by Jazz Ehrenberg. The average initial score is 96.25%. Lead reader, Nicole, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. Independent artist Jazz Ehrenberg is seeking planning grant funding to support the development of a mural project in the Upper Fells Point neighborhood of Baltimore, Maryland. The applicant proposes to celebrate the ecology of the neighborhood and draw on the area's natural beauty while providing an avenue of expression of community identity. In my reading of the application, the highlights were varied and robust community engagement mechanisms, including an online survey, a community collage event, and an ultimate community vote to inform the design selection process. Clear and specific stakeholders who are active in supporting the outreach and development of the project. I saw clear goals and intent to and an intent that's clearly tailored to the community who will be served, and a clear timeline and budget that followed the project description. Some of the questions I had for the applicant, I was curious about how the property owners selected Jazz for the project. I think the application really dug into why Jazz is a good fit, which I thought was strong. But I think like more detail around the mechanism there was the kind of main question that came to mind for me. Overall, I thought this was a very strong application, and based on the rubric, I just had one minor suggestion, which was to include the design fee that is included. It says that it's covered by the client as but it's not included in the budget. So I think just to strengthen the clarity of the application, I would use that design fee as other income so that the application truly communicates the entire scope of the project. But like I said, very minor note, I thought this was a very strong application.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I also felt it was a very strong application, and I don't have any further recommendations.
I also felt the same way. It was a very strong application, and I really loved the engagement of the community at every level of the application as well. I thought it was very intentional in that way.
I also thought it was a great application. I was glad that the artist included his time actually preparing this grant application because it can be a considerable amount of work, and I noticed most of the other applicants didn't, so I'm glad he thought about that and included the work he put into this application as well.
All right, panelists, are there any other recommendations, questions, thoughts? If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No additional information. Just a friendly reminder to our panelists to avoid comparing it to other applications and potentially and to refer to applicants by name to avoid any misgendering of applicants. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 96.67%. Next, please open application ID 2025-34825, submitted by Cultura Planera. The average initial score is 93%. Lead reader Kirk will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Okay, this grant was proposed by Cultura Planera Inc. by Kevin Acosta, and it's a planning grant totaling $10,000 to create, I guess, to plan and create, to plan the creation of a mural, a bike rack, and a series of QR code kind of features that would create an interactivity to the space. The mural is proposed to be 8 feet by 86 feet. And the bike rack is meant to hold 12 bikes. And this is going to appear at the new Folk Life Center in Brunswick, Maryland. And the goals of this project is to highlight Brunswick's current multicultural and multi-ethnic residents. So what they've formulated is 3 phases. The first phase is creating kind of a planning committee that is comprised of 6 members, and Then they're engaging the stakeholders for artistic input, which includes the community. And there's interviews with city historians, city planners, local artists. There's a phase 3 is a design call. And then phase 4 would happen at the end of this year, next year, as they apply for a project grant. Again, this seemed like a very strong application. Lots of community engagement.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now. Kirk, if you had any other remaining thoughts, feel free to share them now.
I thought it was a strong application. It had a very clear description of the community and the goals of the project. And I felt that the calculations included in the budget breakdowns for the amounts were very helpful.
I too thought that it was a strong application. It would be nice to know a little bit more about this planned folklore center eventually. And I thought that in terms of the rubric, it was well defined. The budget in terms of the artist stipends, it would be nice to know if it's $1,000 for 3 or it's, $1,500 for 2 or however that's going to work out. Just show a general number there, so it might be better to define how that goes. But generally, the budget is well defined, and I did think that in terms of timing, as I read it, it appears that there's about a 2-week period for artists to really submit designs, and it seemed like that's a very quick turnaround, and it might be suggested to add a little bit more time there, as well as a step maybe in November for the committee to really review and conclusions, before creating the RFP. Maybe they want to make some modifications to it. Other than that, I thought it was very strong.
Similarly, I thought it was a very strong application. I think I would recommend just really honing in on clarifying the lead artist versus project manager roles. I think there's a lot of moving pieces in this project. And I think when I was reading it, I think just a little bit more detail about kind of the breakdown of responsibilities and the incorporation of the student ideas into the mural. I think I got a sense, but I thought that it could just be a little bit more clear and clarified and detailed to really get a sense of the project process. But overall, I thought it was a very strong application.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 3 minutes.
Thank you. Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No additional info.
All right. Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 94%. Next, please open application ID 2025-34964, submitted by the Wheaton Arts Parade. The average initial score is 95.67%. Jim has stated a conflict of interest and will not be participating in the scoring and discussion. Lead reader Brendan will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
So the Wheaton Arts Parade is seeking a planning grant for a project to create 5 large outdoor pyramid murals that can withstand the seasonal elements in the Wheaton Arts and Entertainment District. The planning process has 2 main objectives: to select 5 artists with diverse backgrounds and styles to paint the pyramid murals and have the community approve their designs, and to design and test a prototype for the pyramid sculptures that will house the murals. The pyramids become an iconic symbol for Wheaton, whose town center is known as the Wheaton Triangle, because it is shaped by the intersection of 3 state highways. Project built upon a temporary project with similar pyramids made from plywood that then weathered and needed to be removed. There's a clear description of project goals and a good plan to hire a fabricator to build 1 prototype pyramid to address weathering and maintenance issues instead of having artists build their own pyramids that could vary in durability. The ability to remove art panels will extend the life of the project and may provide the opportunity for the display of artwork by more artists in the long term. There will be some community engagement in the selection committee's work to select 5 artists to install work in the pyramids. 7 semifinalists will be paid a $500 honorarium for their designs, and then 5 designs will be selected. I thought it was a strong application, a really interesting project. One suggestion for the applicant would be to clearly explain in the call for submissions that funding hasn't been secured yet for creation of the murals, just only for the designs. That's all I got.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I thought the inclusion of the kind of prototyping or temporary installation as a lead up to this strengthened the application a lot. One recommendation I had was around the goals for the project. I would recommend emphasizing the intended impact of the sculptures. I felt like a lot of the goals had to do with the project implementation itself, and so kind of focusing on the impact and intended impact of those sculptures on the community, I think would have strengthened the application. But overall, I found it a strong application.
I also thought it was a strong application, and I appreciated the detail they gave for the community engagement and the artist selection process.
All right, panelists, any other thoughts, questions, recommendations? All right, if not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now.
Panelists, that's been 1 minute if you can wrap up your scoring.
And the average final score is 96%. All right, panelists, so we had initially scheduled a break here, but we are running a little bit ahead of schedule. So we wanted to check in with you and see if you want to continue with taking this break or if you would be up for doing 2 more applications before we take a break. Could you let me know your thoughts? Would you like to take a break now or do 2 more applications?
I'm fine with going 2 more.
Yeah, me as well.
I'm fine with 2 more.
I guess I'm the next one, so I guess I'm fine with it too.
All right. That sounds good with everyone. Then we will proceed. So panelists, please open application ID 2025-35389, submitted by Vico von Voss. The average initial score is 95.33%. Lead reader, Jim, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now. Oh, Jim, we're not hearing you. Jim, if you're speaking, you are.
Gotcha. Sorry about that. I'm too many screens open at the same time.
No worries. Thank you.
Apologize. Okay. So let me go back. I think this is a strong application for a unique kind of a project. Let me read specifically. The funds will support the planning process for Woodhenge, an interactive public artwork by Vico von Voss, located at Atkins Arboretum in Caroline County, Maryland, designed to foster community involvement, inspire reflection through a unique blend of art, nature, science, and history. And overall, I thought that it was very strong. It was very well written. I do believe that, let me just go through a couple of things here. Overall, it seems to be a lot of significant buy-in from the potential partners. And it's a real nice identification of the tasks in terms of the schedule. However, you know, it's kind of generic in terms of each task is about a 2-month time frame. And so that seems to be a little generalized. My recommendation might be to allow for a little bit more flexibility and differentiation between the tasks in terms of the scheduling. But overall, the budget was very good with a breakout of general areas. I'd like to see a little bit more specific line items rather than general groupings. But overall, it's a very, very strong project. And I hope that it gets to move forward to the next step thereafter.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussions, starting now.
I felt it was a strong application. The goals were clear and there were many stakeholder groups that will be engaged in the planning process. I also appreciated in the budget section, the amount of detail in the notes for each item really helped me visualize the stages of the plan, which was helpful.
I also thought the budget was particularly strong in this one. I think the inclusion of identified subcontractors helped me feel confident and kind of built, detail out in kind of establishing feasibility of the project. And I thought the thought and planning and the community engagement was strong as well.
Hi, just noting that we are still in the discussion period for panelists. Applicants are welcome to observe the meeting. They, however, cannot participate. So Vico, we see your hand raised, but if you could please lower it. Thank you. All right, panelists, are there any other questions, thoughts, recommendations? If not, Ryan or Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
I don't think I have any additional comments at this point.
All right. Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 96%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35798 submitted by Chester Stacy. The average initial score is 89.67%. Lead reader May will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
So this application I thought was quite strong. It is to turn a temporary fixture in Highlandtown into a permanent fixture. And so Highlandtown Arts District in Baltimore City, also known as Snake Hill, the neighborhood is also known as Snake Hill, had a temporary fixture that represented a snake and used kinetic energy. And so they would like to turn it into a permanent fixture. And so it would be a rainbow snake lantern. It is rooted in the community. It is rooted in the history of the community, and also would be very inclusive in terms of storytelling for people of color, women, and the LGBTQ community. The plan was very inclusive of community engagement from the beginning till the end. And it is super accessible for folks and also just represents the neighborhood very well. There were some questions about, the permanent fixture being able to withstand the conditions outside. But I do believe that they would like to engage an engineer to make sure that the structure is safe and sound. And they would also be keeping up with it as it is an integral part of the community. And so while they hope that it is aesthetically pleasing and represents Snake Hill in the best way, they also are making sure that it's safe for everyone, which is important. And so the grant here would be going to, yes, the artist, but also the engineer, materials, as well as the installation. I thought that
Thank you, panelists. That's 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, panelists. We now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now. May, feel free to complete your thought there if you'd like.
No, I was going to say I thought everything was well laid out. I thought the budget was realistic and that the spacing of the tasks made sense, especially to ensure completion.
Yeah, it was appreciated that they are interested in involving a structural engineer just to ensure the permanent survival of the piece. Engineers tend to over-engineer, so I thought that added a lot of weight to the application.
I agree with the comments about the engineer. With the nature of the project, that would be very important, and I was happy to see that right in the forefront in the planning process. I also thought it was wonderful. Let me see how much community engagement was involved, and I thought the application did a great job of explaining the significance of the snake and the lantern and how it relates to the community and the history of that particular piece, that it started off as a temporary thing and now they want to make it more permanent.
I also was glad they included the structural engineer. I guess the question I had was whether this was intended to be a freestanding sculpture or attached to a building. There's a reference to a building owner, but it wasn't entirely clear to me the nature of the sculpture, but it's planning grant, so they'll sure they'll figure that out.
I agree with the panelists who have mentioned the strong community engagement. I think that this lantern has existed in a previous iteration, kind of demonstrates existing buy-in from the community, which strengthens the application. I had one kind of recommendation around the budget as it relates to the project description and the idea for the scales of the lantern to be in collaboration with local artists. It was unclear to me where that exists in the budget, if those artists are going to be compensated or if it's going to be a more informal kind of community engagement event where those designs are put together. But I think more clarity around that was my one note on this application that I thought could use a little more detail and description or a separate line in the budget.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 3 minutes.
Thank you. Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
I just wanted to respond to the notes about the structural stability and the engineer. The purpose of providing planning grants is to help applicants work through those details and develop a sustainable and structurally sound sculpture. So we don't have to rate it on its stability now, and that's hopefully what the planning grant would be used for. Thanks for your comments.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 89.67%. All right, so we are now going to take our 10-minute break. The time is 11:12, so we will be back here at 11:22. We'll see you back here at 11:22.
Kathy, I think you're still on mute.
Oops, sorry about that.
Yeah.
The time is 11:22, so if you can start to make your way back, panelists. I see Kirk. If you could either just give me a quick hello or come off of mute for others. Nicole, I see you back. Teresa, I see you. Jim, May, and Brendan. I see Jim. Hello. May, you're back. Great. And Brendan, when you are back, if you can give us a quick hello. Oh, there you are. All right. This is all of us. So we will continue on with our reviews. All right, panelists, please open application ID 2025-35805, submitted by Marion Glebes. The average initial score is 90%. Lead reader Teresa will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Okay. This planning grant was submitted by Marion Glebes, independent artist. The plan is to design a mobile community brick monument using personalized handmade bricks. The scope of planning includes designing the monument and landscaping to accompany it, and expanding the number of bricks through community workshops. Structural testing of the bricks is also included, which is a strong point since they're going to be used to build a monument. So it appeared from the application that the brick project was something that was already in progress with the storytelling and personalizing the bricks. One of the recommendations I would make for the application is, and it might just be the way I was reading it, I wasn't quite sure where planning ended and the project started. The schedule and budget seemed to cover planning all the way through. Some of the items seem to be towards project completion. And I wasn't sure if some of the activities and expenses would be beyond the scope of a planning grant. And that might be something for the PAM staff to contribute. There were some in-kind donations that were pretty high amounts, things that I would expect to see in a project grant. And I think it noted that if awarded, and but it didn't add, I think it took away from the clarity of the application for me.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I will say that I thought this was a very well written and unique kind of a project that was great. I did have some of the same concerns, and especially in terms of the in-kind, but since it didn't really impact the ranking, so to speak, it really didn't have an impact for me, but it was kind of unrealistic and out of line, or at least it seemed to be. They should maybe refine that a little bit as they move forward.
Yeah, I had similar thoughts about the some of the outside funding being dependent on and hinging on the success of receiving the PAM planning grant. But overall, it seemed like a strong application.
The other thing I would say about timing is that it appears to me that the schedule is designed so that it's completed in time to be able to submit for the actual project grant. So that's why it was a little confusing to me in terms of the way the timeline was designed. But overall, I thought it was very strong and unique.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear from Pam staff about that question of kind of when the line is blurred between planning and project. I think the way that I read the application was just that the applicant has demonstrated kind of thinking about the feasibility and the implementation in the planning process. So I think I'm still kind of, I didn't initially score any less because it included kind of that project component to it. I think more specifically to the planning process, I had a question about kind kind of how the applicant will tailor their outreach strategy. I think kind of in their definition of the community to be engaged, they talk about the broader Baltimore community and then also a few specific neighborhoods. And I was curious about, I think based on the geography of their studio, those neighborhoods might have been mentioned, but I think that there was maybe an opportunity to really dig into who the intended audience is and where the partnerships are to kind of support that outreach effort. I think I was looking for a little bit more detail there to really feel like that part of the application was fully filled out. But I think all in all, I thought it was a very strong and exciting project.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 3 minutes.
Thank you. Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit. I think there's been a lot of great comment here, constructive comment and feedback. I think trying to clarify a little bit, I will note that I think you all picked up this project has been ongoing for some time. So maybe if it were a brand new from scratch project, some of the aspects that we expect the planning grant to start with have been achieved over the length of the lifespan. And this is a process to plan for installing the piece permanently in a new location. And so it's going to be kind of hitting in a different spectrum of where maybe the planning process normally is. And various aspects of the implementation have probably been thought out in ways that maybe a project starting from scratch wouldn't have been. But, I also think the project has engaged community at different levels over time and will continue to do so in this new location.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 93%. Next. Please open application ID 2025-35880, submitted by the City of Salisbury. The average initial score is 92.33%. Lead reader Nicole will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. The City of Salisbury is seeking funding for a planning grant to support the development of a public art project in City Park in Salisbury, Maryland. The applicant proposes to install multiple functional sculptures designed to integrate engaging and tactile elements into the park. In my reading of the application, the highlights were clear goals to activate the park with sculpture to strengthen the park's function as a gathering space for the local community and a connector to the adjacent economic assets. Clear and detailed process for artist selection and concept generation. They detailed an RFP process that allows for a range of artists to apply while providing stipends to support a more robust concept development, which I thought was an effective strategy for the scope of the project. Activities that they included in their application, activities that demonstrate community engagement in the design process and the development of the project. I did have some questions for the applicant that came up while I read the application. I was curious about if they've identified any key stakeholders in the process. What are the community groups or organizations that the applicant intends to partner with, or a strategy for identifying those partners to kind of build out the community engagement process? I'm also curious about how the community engagement methods listed in the application would be marketed to community residents. What's their strategy for reaching folks? Based on the rubric, my recommendations include a more detailed description of the community to be served and the stakeholders involved. Are there groups that currently use the park? How will those groups be affected by the or activated by the community engagement activities? Are we?
Thank you. Thank you. That's been 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, panelists. We now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion. Starting now, Nicole, feel free to complete your thought there.
Last thought was just that community engagement activities are listed in the timeline as one block, and I thought it would be more effective to split that out into separate categories to really demonstrate that the engagement process will support every step of the process, like the description said.
Yeah, through reading this application, it was appreciated that, a good portion of the grant funding was going towards the time and effort of the selected artists to create a proposal. I thought that was appropriate.
I agree with what Kirk just mentioned, and also wanted to comment on the fact that they specifically budgeted money for accessibility audits to ensure inclusivity. I thought that was another major strength of the application.
Generally, I would agree that this is a very strong application, but in this conversation that we're talking about here, with all the different applicants that come in, it would be more helpful, I believe, to clarify how the selections are winnowed down from the total number of applicants to the, 5 semi-finalists. So that would be something I think that would be helpful. And then it appears that in the timeline, there's really only about a month once the semi-finalists are selected to modify their designs a little bit more. And I'm not sure if that seems to be enough time. Other than that, I thought it was a great use of funds. It was a great way to activate the park. Even more so, I was a little confused. It seemed there would be a typo where it says this is at the northwest corner of the park, but somewhere in the text it says it encourages further exploration of the park's eastern features. So I was a little confused about that. And just for the solicitation of the artists, is it an RFP or more like an RFQ that then allows them to go forward from there? Thank you. Sorry.
Hey, May, we're not picking up your audio. I see you talking. We're not hearing you. No, sorry, we still can't hear you. Okay.
Panelists, we are at 3 minutes.
Looks like we've lost May. Let's make an exception and add 30 seconds back to the clock to see if we can get May's comments in here. Hey, May.
Hi, sorry about that.
Okay, we can hear you.
Sorry, just refresh. But yes, no, I was just adding on to the accessibility comment. I think that part of it is really important, especially because there's a lot of moving parts in this project. And so that to me just showed that they were prioritizing, one, the diversity of the community, but also being inclusive to those who would be using the park.
All right, great. Thanks so much. All right, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
I don't have any additional comment.
Okay. Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 92%. Next, please open application ID 2025-36048, submitted by the Rebuild Johnston Square Neighborhood Organization. The average initial score is 86.67%. Lead reader, Kirk will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Okay, this seems to be the final planning grant that we'll be reviewing, and it comes from Rebuild Johnston Square Neighborhood Organization, Inc. And Regina Hammond is listed as the contact, with a partner of Jazz Ehrenberg, who we've heard from before as a notable Baltimore-based mural artist. So it's a pretty modest $6,000 grant request for the planning of a new public mural in the Johnston Square neighborhood. The real goal of this is to continue their efforts towards visual beautification and revitalization of the neighborhood. In the first 15 years, well, no, actually, since they've been in operation, they've been able to revitalize some parks and murals, and even include a new library in that area. So the project goals are to beautify and enhance, and they've engaged Jazz Ehrenberg early, so that they can be an integral part of the process from the very beginning, involved with the community by way of community workshops. There's a number of stakeholders listed, including the homeowner, Ryan Jeffries, Regina Hammond, several community members, the 6 Branch Farm and Garden, which we've heard from too, and Des Ehrenberg. And this all has to do with just making aware of the Hoffman Street corridor and the greening initiative that's happening there.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 2 minutes.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion starting now.
I thought it was a strong application, and I appreciated that there was community engagement throughout the planning process, both hands-on, but also accommodations for people who couldn't make the workshops, that there was going to be surveys or a digital way for them to participate.
I thought that this application did an excellent job identifying the community that will be served by the project and really tailoring kind of the partnerships and community engagement strategies needed to be in lockstep with that community through the development of the project. I thought that component of the application was really strong, and the goals articulated in the application also are in line, it seems, with the partners and the community to be served by the project. So I thought this was a very strong application.
For me, reading it did seem that the planning schedule was a little loose and kind of generic. Maybe part of that planning process would be locking down those dates. So I didn't, score it any less really because of that. But that was just something that I noticed.
Yeah, I would +1 on the planning schedule piece as well. I felt like things were missing.
All right, panelists, any other questions, thoughts, recommendations? If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
I don't think I have anything more to share, just kind of a friendly reminder to frame any comments as recommendations. So if you notice something that you think could be strengthened, maybe find a way to describe it as a recommendation for this particular application. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now.
Hi, panelists. It's been 1 minute. If you could please wrap up your scoring.
And the average final score is 85.67%. And that was the last of the planning grants we're reviewing today. We're going to be moving forward with reviewing the new Artworks project grant application. So I just want to note the change in the rubric criteria. So just let's all make that mental gear shift right now for the new rubric for the project grants. All right. Please open application ID 2025-34637, submitted by the Arts Council of Calvert County. The average initial score is 90%. Lead reader, Jim, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Well, thank you. You stole my thunder by saying that we finished all the planning, and now we're on to the project grants where all the big money is, which is great. And I think we got a lot of good ones. I'm glad to see we're moving right along. I thought this was definitely a very strong application and that it was a nice combination of art, community, and empathy. And so it's a real nice addition to an existing location where people can both reflect and enjoy nature. And to read what this application is for specifically, excuse me, funds will support the Art Council of Calvert County's implementation of a new public artwork, a sculpture that is dedicated to those that have lost their lives to cancer by artists Ali Mirsky and C.G. Duffy, with Impact Art, located at the Mark R. Fraser Sunrise Garden in North Beach, Calvert County. So this is evidently in conjunction with other sculptures and public art that is in and around this particular sculpture garden that they have already created. It doesn't explain a whole lot about the Sunrise community itself, but overall it seems to be a wonderful project that has clearly defined the cultural and empathic meanings of the different colors and shapes that they're utilizing. They are using flowers and items along that line to kind of represent. And let me see, any other comments that I have? I thought it was very strong, and the applicant has clearly successfully administered other multiple arts grants projects, and the artists seem to have had lots of other capabilities and projects in the past. Does seem that in terms of the time frame with the rubric and the schedule, there's sufficient time for workshops. It does show that based on input previously, I believe they have made some modifications, which was nice to see that community impact had already, or community engagement had had some of that impact already.
Thank you. That's been 2 minutes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion starting now. Feel free to complete any thought there if you'd like, Jim.
No, I think overall that's what I needed to say, is that it's a very strong project. It's nice to see that there was some sort of modification with input. I'm not really sure if it was a design grant beforehand or community input and input from the artists, but overall I thought it was a very strong project.
I thought it was a strong application, and I really appreciated the fact that there were opportunities for a wide range of community members to participate during both the community workshops to create portions of the sculpture and also during the dedication program.
Having a signed letter of recommendation from the mayor of North Beach, I think, was also a nice touch and showed the overall support of this project.
I think one of the most compelling pieces of this project was the choice and use of ceramic and what that would mean for the conditions that the project would face and the project in the future. So I thought that was very intentional.
I would recommend in the community engagement portion of the application, including details about how the community shaped the design and theme of the sculpture. Like the applicant talks about gathering that feedback, but it was unclear to me how that was marketed or how that unfolded. And I think more detail there, or maybe identifying some stakeholders of like who was involved in that process would strengthen the application for me.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 3 minutes.
Thank you, Ryan and Nora. Do you have any additional information to share?
I didn't know.
I do. I just want to be mindful that we did not require letters or of support for applicants, and is not included in the application process. Although we like to see that there is wide support for projects, it should not be used as a scoring component.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score in comments in Smart Simple, if desired, with 1 minute starting now.
Panelists, that's been 1 minute. If you can wrap up your scoring, please.
And the average final score is 90%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35188, submitted by Nosreem Baltimore. The average initial score is 94%. Lead reader Brendan will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
So this project from Nosreem will feature a mural in Baltimore that highlights the scientific contributions of Henrietta Lacks and different aspects of her life. QR code will link to a website with more educational resources, including about the ethical issues surrounding the taking of her cells for medical research without her consent. There is extensive community engagement in the selection of the artist Sean Perkins and incorporation of suggestions for elements to include in the mural design. The artist also will lead a community paint day where residents can help paint sections of the mural, and a panel discussion will be held as part of the unveiling. Nosreem also has collaborated with the Lacks family and the Henrietta Lacks Legacy Group, who are important stakeholders of the project. The applicants secured additional grant funding from the Creative Baltimore Fund, which illustrates support for the project and has 3 other pending grant applications in addition to this one. I think it's a well-planned project with an experienced artist, extensive community organization, good planning that'll celebrate the historic contributions of a local Black woman whose cell line is still being used in medical research. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 4 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I thought it was a very strong application. There was a high level of community input and engagement, including collaboration with groups representing Henrietta Lacks's family and estate/legacy. I thought that was very important. The community paint event will keep the community involved throughout or during the implementation as well. I also noted that the artist and sponsoring organization have a high degree of experience that would be needed to successfully implement the project.
All right, panelists, are there any other questions, thoughts, recommendations? If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No addition.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score in comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 94%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35254, submitted by the Pikesville Armory Foundation. The average initial score is 87.2%. Lead reader, May, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
So this to me was a very strong application. It is for Pop-Up, Baltimore's premier inflatable sculpture festival. And so it's very different from what we may have seen in the past. And it is actually exactly as it's described and how you can think about it. It is inflatables. And so this project would feature different artworks that represent not just the community at hand, but also just represent different like cultural moments in time and like things that are happening in our world. And so I thought it was a very creative use of space. And I think it brings a curiosity to the space in a way that maybe folks wouldn't expect. The community engagement throughout the application was very, very strong. There is a very strong tie to the community. And that is like very, very evident in terms of the folks and stakeholders that they are engaging. And it's also evident just based on how they have planned everything. And I think they also just listed out everyone that they're working with and every program that they're having. And so that was very, very strong, especially when it comes to engaging people around inflatables, which again is something that folks may not have seen before. And so I thought the budget was realistic and made sense for the project. My recommendation here is around the maintenance plan. When I saw inflatable, I was like, okay, well, if they can inflate, they can deflate. And so how are we now just being more preventative? While there were things in place, I think that because of that, the nature of it, and the unpredictable weather conditions all year round, I think there could be something to be more preventative in place.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 2 minutes.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
Well, I'll step in and agree with Dr. May that this is a very fun and intriguing application. It's a really nice project. I think it was very well defined. I think a lot of the community outreach is wonderful, including the fact that, assuming that this is a pop-up festival for, I don't know, a month or longer, it looks like, they've got a variety of different days that are focused on bringing in different facets of the community. So they have a Children's Day and a Hispanic Heritage Day and a nature-focused day and a self-care and empowerment day, a senior citizen day, an art day, a business chamber day, and they've identified who the partners are for each of those. So it's clear that they've done a lot of work ahead of time in order to kind of plan all of this out. I think it's really kind of fun and intriguing and unique and different. So it's a fun festival, so to speak, for presumably about a month or so. The only real things that I have recommendations or comments on, one of them is called the Harmonica Cake, which is really cool and neat. And I guess my concern was about sound, but it seems like it's being placed inside a building. So there should help to minimize the noise and sound issues for the surrounding neighbors and businesses along that strip there. And maybe they want to address that as they move forward. And also in terms of the maintenance, they mentioned that there'll be security throughout, except I don't really notice where they mention in the evening, assuming that many of these inflatables, at least the exterior ones, are deflated. If that's the case, how do we prevent some vandalism in the evening and things along that line? So it would be, I think, advisable to include something along that line. Other than that, I thought it was very strong and really appreciated the application. Thank you.
I thought it was a strong application, and I thought the uniqueness of the inflatables has the potential to bring a lot of people to public art that might not necessarily be exposed to it or have the desire to check things out in other forms. That the uniqueness was a big selling point for me.
I would mention in terms of recommendations regarding the budget, where they identify the fees for the artists, it would be nice to define a line item. Is each artist getting 3K each in fees, or how that would work out? Otherwise, the budget breakout was very sufficient.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 3 minutes.
Thank you. Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
I think that the only thing I might add about this is that just because this campus, this Pikesville Armory campus, is kind of a new venue that hasn't really hosted a lot of public programs, so people may not be aware of it. It's a really large space. It's like a 14-acre campus. So there isn't necessarily a direct impact on local businesses or residents that I could foresee. You really need to arrive there to experience the art. Yeah, otherwise I support everything that was said.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now.
Panelists, that's been 1 minute. If you can please wrap up your scoring.
And the average final score is 88.4%. All right, panelists. So again, we had a scheduled break here. However, we are still running ahead of schedule. So we just want to check in and see if you want to take your break here or if we'd like to proceed and do 2 more applications.
Happy to keep going.
All right. Same, keep going.
I'm good.
All right, everyone good with proceeding? Sounds like? Okay. So before we move forward, I just want to provide one reminder from our creative meeting actions, which is to balance speaking and listening, especially considering that we only have 3 minutes for the discussion period. Just be mindful of the time that you're taking there and make sure that there's room for other panelists to be able to contribute their thoughts within that short three-minute window. Thanks so much. All right. So next up, please open application ID 2025-35272, submitted by the Arts Lab of South County. The average initial score is 85.2%. Lead reader Teresa will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
This project grant was submitted by the Arts Lab of South County. Funds requested will support a new public artwork, a painted mural by Cindy Fletcher Holden. The mural design depicts scenes and motifs reflective of Deal, Maryland, to support and remind everybody of their heritage. Strengths of the application include a detailed description supported by artifacts that they submitted for attachment A. There's been a strong level of community engagement throughout the planning process as far as submitting designs and contributing to narrowing down what would appear in the mural. Both the applicant and the artist have the experience necessary to indicate that there will be a successful outcome if awarded this grant.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion starting now.
I just echo that I appreciated the strong amount of community engagement sort of in the planning process and the design of the mural.
I thought the community engagement piece here could have, I recommend a stronger community engagement piece, especially because the youth are being engaged.
All right, panelists, any other thoughts, questions, or recommendations? All right, if not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No additional comment.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 85.2%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35540, submitted by 6th branch. The average initial score is 96.2%. Lead reader Nicole will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
The sixth branch is seeking funding for a project to support the development of 3 murals. It'll support the implementation of murals by Jazz Ehrenberg, located at the Oliver Community Farm in the Johnson Square Farm and Community Garden, and the Broadway East Tree and Berry Farm in Baltimore City. These murals are proposed to serve as a visual and symbolic centerpiece for the farms, enhance their visibility, and foster deeper connections between the farms and their surrounding communities. In my reading of the application, the highlights were that the applicant thoroughly demonstrated the conceptual meaning of the artworks and their connections to the 3 proposed sites, I thought, very effectively. While the applicant included a description of the materials and media in their application, I did recommend including a more thorough description of the proposed installation process to demonstrate feasibility to a greater degree than is currently present, but I thought as a whole, very strong. The applicant thoroughly demonstrated a dedication to community engagement throughout the entire planning process and outlined a plan for including community groups through the implementation process as well. So I thought that area of the application was very strong, and also demonstrated clear evidence of longstanding collaboration with the community described. And I think also the details that I was looking for in the project description about the materials and things were covered in the budget. So I thought, at the end of reading the whole application, that was kind of addressed. And that's.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 2 minutes.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
Yeah, this seemed to be an extremely strong presentation. One detail that I enjoyed and I thought was helpful was listing the actual workshops, the Johnson Square workshop, the Oliver workshops, and the Broadway East workshops with dates and the number of attendees, just to calculate, the amount of people were impacted and involved in the art making process.
I also thought it was a very, very strong proposal with a lot of great community engagement, experienced local artists, and also appreciated the details about the different designs and the reasons for selecting the various plants and animals to be featured in the murals. I also, just as far as, the use of public art is sort of creating place and demarcating a bit the gardens from the neighborhood, sounds like a good thing.
All right, panelists, any other questions, thoughts, recommendations? If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No additional comment.
No comment.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 97%. All right, folks, so we are going to take our break now. We were scheduled for 10 minutes. However, we're going to make it a 15-minute break since we're so ahead of schedule today. Give us a little bit more time to grab a little bite or drink. So we'll do 15 minutes. The time is now 12:26, so we will be back here at 12:41. So we'll see you back here at 12:41. Thank you. All right, folks, the time is now 12:41. If you can start to make your way back. And as you come back, if you could either turn your video on or just give me a quick hello so that I know that you're back. I see May, Kirk, Teresa, Nicole. Brendan, Jim. Wonderful. We are all back and proceed with our final set of applications for review. All right, panelists, please open application ID 2025-35707, submitted by the Baltimore County Arts Guild. The average initial score is 96.75%. Nicole has stated a conflict of interest and will not be participating in the discussions and scoring. Lead reader Jim will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Okay, hello and welcome back. This is a grant where the funds will support Signs of the People, submitted by Catonsville. This is a project plan. Excuse me, a public wayfinding project in the Catonsville Arts District, authored by artists Eva and Ciro Marquez Salmeron, excuse me, and manufactured by Maryland-based fabricator Kyle Miller, featuring signs at really should be, I think it's 4, featuring signs at 3 historical cultural sites, images and text about the sites, additional information via QR codes, linked to a website, and silhouette portraits of local residents pointing to the sites, highlighting the district's rich historical, cultural, and community engaged and identity. Excuse me, so that probably took up most of my time here. The reality is that this appears to be a project that is already in process, where they've done some work already. These seem to be 4 signs that would be created and fabricated here in Maryland, that would highlight local areas in the Catonsville Arts District. And I think overall it's a very interesting idea. And I think it's well written. I do have some concerns and recommendations. They have collaborated with quite a few, and they've done a lot of work during the earlier design areas. So that's wonderful that they've done all that outreach and engagement. However, it's not as clear to me when they move forward and they try to select so to give you an image, these are regular signs that have some historical or text information about the location where they will be placed. And then on top of that is a figure of one of the local figures, historical or current figures that the community will supposedly select, that will be pointing towards that particular facility where these signs will be. So that's a wonderful idea. How they really define who those 4 and select who those 4 will be is not quite as clear.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That's been 2 minutes.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
If I can continue, I would just say that overall, I think it's a great idea. And they claim that Baltimore County will help them with both the locations and the installation and permits and all of that. But what's not clear to me is, are they on public land? Are they on private land? Are they on state roads? They're supposed to be basically visible from the road because one side has Braille, which is wonderful, and the other side is text-based and image-based. But some of the concerns about putting them on public streets or public sidewalks are not really addressed here. So I've got some other questions, but I'll leave it for other panelists to speak first. Thank you.
Yeah, it seemed like an incredibly strong application as far as the rubric is concerned. I had my one question was about the color of the signs themselves being so close to the yellow of the yield sign. Would that distract or confuse drivers? But I mean, the project itself, I think, just as far as you know, pointing towards a historical significance of these areas and people, I think is incredibly useful way to use public art. As an educational tool, I would say.
I will mention administratively in the application, it seemed to say that they had received a project grant in the previous year, which I think was a typo. They obviously received a planning grant, but not, so they are really eligible. I think it was just a mistake in the way they submitted their application. The other thing is they talk about 2-day rentals and installation. I'm assuming that's really for each sign. There's 4 locations. So you might want to take a look at the budget and whether that's really 2 days or if it's really 8 days, and how this also coordinates with the other signs that either are existing or are in the planning area. It appears that some signs similar to this were previously created and paid for through another grant. So that's unclear, and maybe the applicant can clarify that a bit.
Thank you, panelists. That's time.
All right, thank you. Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
Yeah, I'll add that, I think these are some valid comments and questions that came up around the, either the right of way, where the signs land in the right of way, or, whether the colors might conflict with other, road signage. But I'll note that the project overall has the support of the Baltimore County Planning Department. And, the role of a group like that would be to connect them with the right technical teams from transportation at the local or state level, et cetera. So I think that the team is in place to address those concerns. And then further, Jim's last note about a prior grant, while the group may have engaged in prior kind of like creative artistic signage, this is a unique project by this specific artist team. And so it is not the same design or approach in creating that signage. We should look at this as its own standalone project.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final score and comment in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 96.75%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35837, submitted by Arts Every Day. The average initial score is 89.8%. Lead reader Kirk will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Okay, so this project grant was put forth by the organization Arts Everyday Inc. by Betty Gonzalez, and it has to do with the Curtis Bay Elementary School. The artist for this mural has been identified as J. Wolf Schlossberg Cohen. Funds will support Art Everyday's implementation of a new public artwork, a community-based public art mural by artist J. Wolf Schlossberg Cohen, located at Curtis Bay. And the title of the piece is No One Eats Alone. It is an extensive public art, or interior mural in the building itself, that extends in the cafeteria and in the hallways. It involves a community workshop with 250 plus students, K through 5th grade. So they're hands-on, 100% involved in the making of the artwork here. And what I thought was great about this project is that the artist has already completed a mural in the facility, so they're familiar with the staff and the students. And this is just another section of the building that they are interested in beautifying. No One Eats Alone. So let's see. They successfully completed the planning grant, and this is a continuation of that. I thought that the scheduling was strong. It lists, every workshop and how many hours.
Thank you. That's been 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I thought it was a strong application. I appreciate the fact that this artist already has an established relationship with the school in a previous project. So that indicates a strong possibility of success in community building between the artist and the school. What else did I note? I also noted that the descriptions of the budget were very helpful in the notes, and the calculations as well. It's very helpful when you're evaluating to see that kind of detail.
One recommendation I have for this application is in the prior experience category. I thought the applicant really demonstrated the artist's background and experience, but I think did not include a case for their own capacity. Whereas I think there was an opportunity to strengthen that response with that information.
I'd agree with all the comments, and I think it's a strong proposal. My one suggestion relating to the budget is it looks like the artist assistants are only being paid $20 per hour, which isn't much more than the $15 per hour minimum wage in Maryland. So the applicant may wish to consider providing more compensation to assistants in the future.
All right, are there any other questions, thoughts, or recommendations? If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No comment.
No additional comment.
Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 89.6%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35952, submitted by God's Best Family. The average initial score is 88.4%. Lead reader Brendan will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
So this proposed mural will overlook the Digital Harbor High School courtyard in Baltimore, which is operated by a local nonprofit called God's Best Family. A survey of students will ask broad questions about their school and what they would like to see on the mural. The artist Sol Rea will review survey answers and incorporate the biggest themes and ideas into the final mural design. Mural cloth will be cut into unique shapes and provide students with the opportunity to paint their own designs or words using paint markers that will then be adhered to the wall, and art students also will help paint the mural. Based on the application, the artist already has a pretty detailed design for the mural with a compass theme, so it was a little unclear to me if that entire design might change based on student recommendations or if their input would be limited to fit within the original design. There's no dedicated maintenance budget. There's a short-term maintenance plan with the artist, but the long-term plan is a little less clear, although the school is committed to provide long-term maintenance. So overall, I think it's a solid project with good engagement with the students and some good outcomes.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussions, starting now.
The only comment that I'll make is I did think it was, well, I'm sorry, I'm not on this one. I'm on a different one. Apologize.
I had two minor recommendations on this one. Just that recognizing that the proposed mural is in a public space, I wondered about stakeholders beyond just students in the process and the school. Connection with the neighborhood writ large, I think would have strengthened that a bit. I think also from the prior experience response, I think demonstrating on the applicant's side some art-specific activities in their experience would have strengthened that response in my scoring. But like I said, two minor recommendations for me.
All right, panelists, and any other thoughts or recommendations? If not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No comment.
No additional information.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now.
Brendan, we're just waiting for your score. If you could just hit, oh, never mind. We got it. Thanks.
And the average final score is 89.6%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35969, submitted by the York Corridor Business Improvement District. The average initial score is 91.4%. Lead reader May will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
Yes, so this project was a strong submission. It is from the York Road Improvement District, and the description of the artwork itself was very tied to the community. It described vibrant colors, brightness, people, and then welcoming the community in. And I thought that the artwork was beautiful, but the activities planned along the way were really like what seemed like a manifestation of the artwork. And so it was, again, very welcoming, very inclusive of the community, and just very well thought out, even in terms of materials being used and things like that. And again, the community engagement was super strong. And I think they wanted to do a launch party or a welcome party, and that was just, again, an embodiment of the artwork itself. I do believe that the artist has had a lot of experience, and so the project schedule made sense. My recommendation would be for a little bit more time, just because there are so many activities and things along the way to be done. And so I thought that a little space could be used. And then my other recommendation here is for maintenance. While I do believe that there is a plan for the durability and exposure of the piece, my recommendation here would be to put something in place for vandalism, just because it is at a major intersection on a major street. And other than that, I thought that this was a very strong application. The artwork, the concept, the meaning, all of it, and the activities along the way were super beautiful and very well thought out.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I was impressed with the level of community engagement, both during the planning process, and that the level of engagement will continue through the community paint days during the creation phase. And they also had post-installation community programming already planned, which I thought was a strong point as well.
I think the one area that they could work on in their budget, but chances, I don't really see any expenses set aside for these outreach activities, for the dedication event, or if they're going to be doing food or any expenses. There's usually some expenses involved with events, and I'm not really sure where those are covered, and I don't see that in the budget. So I might recommend that they want to include that. I know we all like to use a contingency in the admin fees and all of that, but maybe there's a little cutout that you could identify specifically for the event support. Other than that, it was a great idea.
All right, panelists, are there any other thoughts, questions, recommendations? All right, if not, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
No
Nope.
issue.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 92.8%. Next, please open application ID 2025-35981, submitted by the Skate Park of Baltimore. The average initial score is 93.2%. Lead reader, Teresa, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
This project grant was submitted by the Skate Park of Baltimore. Funding would support the creation and installation of a mural celebrating the diverse skate community of Baltimore. Hero Hubbard was chosen as the artist, and he has quite an extensive amount of experience with large-scale murals. The mural would encompass 2 walls facing the skate park, which are now either graffiti filled or have nothing on them, so it would serve to beautify the area. The design features notable figures in the local skating community, both past and present. I liked how the goal was to also capture the history of the skaters in the area. The strengths of the application were a very detailed description, which aligns with the artifacts submitted for attachment A. There's strong community involvement from the planning through creation. The artist is very experienced, and the applicant organization has been established there for a while, the skate park, for quite some time, which would indicate a successful outcome, that they're invested in the community.
Thank you. Panelists, we now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion, starting now.
I thought it sounds like a great project, especially with the very experienced artist who's done a lot of work with the local skate community to incorporate their thoughts, desires into the design elements. I guess one concern was with the maintenance plan. There's no funding for maintenance, and State Artists is committed to providing, quote, simple maintenance, but it's not entirely clear what that means or how it would be paid for. And it seems like the plan relies a little too heavily on the goodwill of local residents to not, potentially engage in more graffiti at the site. But overall, sounds like a great project that I support.
All right, panelists, any other thoughts, questions, recommendations?
I'll echo that I think this is a strong project. I did have some questions that came up for me just around detail around the engagement and design process, about just details about like how many community members were interviewed and how those community members were selected, how many interviews and things were held to inform the process. I think any one of those details would have helped strengthen that the concept even further.
Thank you, panelists. That's been 3 minutes.
All right, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
I just want to reiterate that Maintenance is not an eligible expense in this grant program, so they're not permitted to list that within the funds for the PAN program.
Thanks. I was going to add also on the topic of maintenance that I think in general, the areas that'll be covered by this mural have not had commission murals on them yet, maybe a portion of it, but not that hasn't been updated in some time. And that's made clear in the application that like in the areas where they have commissioned more recent murals, those areas have not received graffiti.
All right, thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now.
Panelists, that's been 1 minute. If you can wrap up your scoring.
And the average final score is 93.6%. Next, please open application ID 2025-36023, submitted by the Patterson Park Neighborhood Association. The average initial score is 87%. Lead reader, Nicole, will now introduce the grant in connection to the rubric with 2 minutes beginning now.
The Patterson Park Neighborhood Association is seeking funding for a project grant to implement a mural in Patterson Park to celebrate the LGBT community. The project is a collaboration between the artists Maria Gabriela Aldana, Casa de Maryland Youth Works, and Be More Liberated, and consists of a collage assembled with designs generated by youth interns who were engaged as a part of Queernessness, which is a multimedia community project that coordinates conversations and art workshops to combat homophobia. The project hosted public art workshops at Be More Liberated to produce youth artworks that were generated or incorporated into the final design. In my reading of the application, the highlights were clear dedication to the project goal of activating and expressing LGBT histories. And I thought there was a nice inclusion of engagement materials in the proposed design that helped build the conceptual meaning of the work. I think the images included in the design slides at the end really spoke to the process that went into the generation of the design. Based on the rubric, I'd like to see the applicant identify who's on the steering committee. It was unclear if that was internal to the neighborhood association or if there's a wider variety of stakeholders represented on that, that committee. I thought that the maintenance needs of the application weren't fully addressed. So just identifying the party responsible for upholding the maintenance is a recommendation I suggest. And I would encourage the applicant to use or incorporate more details about the fabrication process.
Thank you. That's 2 minutes.
All right, thank you, panelists. We now have 3 minutes for any additional discussion starting now. Feel free to complete any thought there if you'd like.
I just wanted to say that some of the fabrication details were actually in the budget, but addressing them more fully in the project description, I think would have strengthened the application from my perspective.
I had a similar response to the section about maintenance. I think it was listed that the good Dr. Marquez will be responsible for the maintenance, and that seemed a little not realistic. I guess the recommendation would be to put into place something a little more appropriate for long-term maintenance besides the clear coat.
Well, I'll echo some of the same sentiments. Overall, I think the concept is wonderful. The outreach is wonderful. The location is wonderful, but the questions that I have are a little bit, or suggestions that I have are a little bit more related to the execution and the budget. So for instance, just a couple of really small things. I noticed that they mentioned that they might have barcodes involved. I'm wondering if they really meant QR codes nowadays. You know, little silly things like that. Also, the time frame mentions in the text that they wanted to hopefully have the unveiling before the school starts, since so much of the neighborhood and the students are helping, and the outreach for the community paint days is great. But yet the timeline shows that the actual dedication is going to be in October, which is after school already starts. So that was a little confusing. More so related to the budget itself. And these are some of the questions that I have. And of course, in terms of maintenance, right, just identifying Dr. Marquez as the building owner is insufficient. The question is, will he get out there and do the painting or whatever? But the real questions in terms of the budget are a few things. One is, and this is maybe something that the staff can answer. In the expenses, it identifies a grant writer for $2,400, which is not identified anywhere else in the text. And it mentions that the artist, I guess it says 8% of the grant. I don't even know if that's legal, that you can get a percentage of the grant that you're writing, or how that's working, but that's a question that I have. In addition to that, when we talk about the project manager shows $150 an hour at 6 hours a month. So that's $900 a month times 4 people. Well, that would be a lot more than the 3,600 that's identified here. So I have those kinds of questions. I would recommend that the applicant define those a little bit more, because it's a great concept. It's a great idea. There's obviously a lot of experience doing these kinds of things in the past and coordinating and great outreach. It's just the execution thereof and defining the budget a little bit more would be my recommendations. Thank you.
Panelists, thank you. That's been 3 minutes.
All right, Ryan and Nora, do you have any additional information to share?
Yeah, I am trying to organize those comments into a good response. I will note, I think there could be better clarification of some of those line items, but the use of funds towards a overhead cost that could include the grant writer is an eligible expense. I think that's the best I can do in their time frame.
All right. Thank you. Based on the information gathered from the discussion, please edit your final scores and comments in Smart Simple if desired, with 1 minute starting now. And the average final score is 86.8%. And that was our last application for review today. Thank you, panelists, so much for your time and thoughtfulness. Your recommendations and discussions are incredibly valued to the review process and applicants. Thank you so much. Now I will turn it over to Stephen for some final remarks.
Thanks, Kathy. And just reiterating thanks to your panelists. Again, thanks for all of the work that you do in preparation for this meeting and reviewing the applications, and also for your time, attention, and all of your work here today. We really thank you. This is a valuable part of our process and in making recommendations for awards that will impact public art across our state. I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of work on the staff side to make these panel meetings come off, or at least appear seamless. And so I really want to thank Ryan, Nora, Kathy, and Kirk for all of their work in panel preparation and application processing, all of that, and in the administration of today. So this will end the public portion of the meeting. Observers, please feel free to be in touch with MSAC staff with any questions about today's process. And panelists, we're going to ask you to hang on briefly. We'll end the recording and then we will cover briefly some next steps.